So here is the episode 2 of What If Naruto Was Raised and Tamed by Forbidden Wolves. Now consuming no more extra time, let's move on to the video. Naruto and Kunga remained frozen as their mother, who still had a shocked expression on her face, looked at the two boys. None of them said a word as the silence went on for what felt like an eternity, but when Kushina saw Naruto about to make a move to run, she immediately acted. "Naruto, please," she said, trying to sound as calm as possible as she began to walk toward the two boys. "Don't run." Naruto remained standing in place as Kushina continued to approach the two boys. It felt as if it took hours for her to finally be near and knelt down to his and Kunga's level and hugged both of her sons tightly to her before she drew back slightly and put a hand on both of their shoulders. "It's okay, I'm not angry at either of you. Naruto, I promised you that I won't ever hurt you again and I still intend to keep it," she said, smiling at the both of them. "I don't know how you both managed to get summoning contracts, but I'm not upset." She stopped and then placed one hand lightly on Naruto's face to reassure him she meant what she said. "I know you don't fully trust me or your father yet, or even your brothers and sisters for that fact. But I won't throw away the hard work I did to win back your trust by pressing you," she said, causing the blonde's eyes to widen. He could still remember all the good things Kushina and Minato had done to win back their son's trust before this whole debacle with Mizuki. "We all love you, Naruto," she said, hugging both boys close to her again, causing Naruto stiffen just for a second before relaxing. "And we'll still love you, no matter how hard we'll work to get it back," she whispered in his ear. As she released the hug, Naruto still didn't say anything, but just nodded. Kushina smiled a bit as she looked at her two sons, just as an Anbu member arrived. Kushina informed him that everything was alright and said that she will return the tower before she ordered Mizuki to be restrained and taken to Ibiki. After that, Kushina along with both of her sons and daughter went back to the Hokage tower together. XXXX. Naruto was nervous as he stood in his father's office along with Narumi, Kunga, and his mother. The third Hokage was also there, and not so surprisingly the two boys' surrogate older sister Ikao, who was wearing her Anbu mask and cloak. She had a comforting hand placed on the blonde's shoulder. Naruto had a feeling that he and Kunga would have to explain how they came by their summoning contracts. Sitting behind the desk, Minato gave a sigh as he looked at his son who, although appeared to be calm, was trying to fight off the nervousness he was feeling at being put in the spotlight, though he was a bit relieved that it wasn't only him being put on the spot. He was also thankful those old crones, Homura, Kaharu, and most of all, Danzm weren't there. They would probably have pressured both boys to reveal everything on how they had gotten the contracts. Deciding to begin the conversation, Minato spoke up. "Naruto," he said, "I know you've been back for only a few months, and that's probably not enough to earn your full trust back." Naruto stiffened a bit. "But one thing is for sure. You and Kunga both used summon contracts that haven't been seen in the Hidden Leaf Village, or if they have they haven't had a user in a long time." He then took a deep breath and stopped himself. "I'm not angry with either of you, neither is anyone else. I know you would probably like to keep whatever it is you know a secret. But please, when you feel like telling us, don't be afraid to." He then turned to Narumi, who didn't even bother hiding how nervous she was. "As for you, young lady," Minato said in a firm stern tone, "even though we now know it was Mizuki who was manipulating you, thanks to Kunga's summon informing us about what was happening, you should have come to us first. What could have been so important that you would hide this from us?" He asked before continuing, "If you had come to us in the first place, we could have prevented a whole lot of undue panic, stress, and worry." Narumi winced a little at that, but she managed to answer. He had information that I wanted and said he'd give it to me if I gave him the scroll," she said, causing everyone to raise an eyebrow at that. "Information? About what, Narumi-chan?" said Hiruzen as the young blonde lowered her head down. The true cause of why mostly everyone in the village neglected Nai-chan. That bit of info sent everyone in the room for a loop. "What did he tell you, Musume?" Minato asked. Narumi was hesitant at first, but eventually managed to speak it out. He said that a genjutsu was placed on the village just after we turned 6, and the plan was for Naruto Nai to despise you and force him away from the village," she said, making the eyes of the two parents and Naruto's to widen in shock. Of course, the plan backfired due to the fact that somehow the genjutsu didn't affect the whole village, and Naruto only went into the forest of death to train to get stronger. As she finished that statement, Naruto began raking his brain for whoever might gain something out of this whole mess. He was not alone in this as his father and Hiruzen were also searching their minds as well. Who could have placed the genjutsu and for what reason? Their suspect list being short to begin with, since the list of people who could cast a jutsu on that scale and level who they knew of were few. This list happened to be composed of Homura, Kaharu, Danzm, Orochimaru, or the masked man who caused the Kyuubi to attack the village 12 years ago. However, 3 of those names were instantly scratched of the list due to the fact that 2 of the suspects had let their skills slip as they took more stock in their roles as advisors nowadays. While Orochimaru had once been accused of being traitor, having been arrested after suspicion about what went on in the lab that he operated. After he was taken to Ibiki Marino for interrogation on the scene that was found in his lab. He asked that they have Inochi Yamanaka look through his mind to prove his innocence by reviewing the past few hours of his life. When the truth was revealed, they apologized and released the seals placed on him. During the interrogation, they had found that it was a spy who had gained Orochimaru's trust by posing as a new apprentice who had framed him. This spy had been stealing information and resources from his lab for Haruko, a former Leaf Village shinobi who was banished after his experiments on human test subjects were found out. After the incident, Minato and Jiraiya apologized for their actions, Jiraiya especially. However, Orochimaru brushed them off saying that they were only doing their jobs and that he would have done the same if he had been in their position. Originally he was bitter and angry that his sensei Hiruzen Sarutobi had chosen Minato to succeed him as the 4th Hokage. But after Hiruzen talked to him about his reasons, he grudgingly accepted it. Slowly, he grew to like the man, thanks in part to Jiraiya forcing him out of his lab to meet with him for a drink from time to time. Now, he was the head of the torture and interrogation division and the main consultant when it came to building teams as he oversaw all outgoing genin teams from the academy and had some insight as to what went on inside of their minds due to his position. However, Dansum, who was the head of the Anbu splinter group known as Root, was one of the few people who could have done something this big. He had also been adamant in having Menma, Mito, Naruto and Narumi made into weapons molded for the village. He would have had his operatives watching who entered and exited the village. If Naruto would left the village, his men would be waiting to snatch him and take him to his base to be brainwashed into only serving him and him alone after all, if he could gain a possible seal master who had access to the Fox's power and the Uzumaki Kekkei Genkai. The benefits to it would be too good for him to pass up. The other was the masked man who had tried to destroy the village 12 years ago. However, he hadn't been seen since that night. Naruto chose that moment to speak. "I remember something that Mizuki said," he said, getting the others' attention, something about a mummy and what he said. Minato and Hiruzen's eyes immediately narrowed at that bit of information, knowing that Dansum was called that not so affectionate nickname by many of the ninja and villagers alike. The young Hokage was about ready to order an investigation on the old bastard and have him squeezed for any information he knew about the Genjutsu until he got a confession from him. He then took a deep mental breath to calm himself down before he made any rash decisions. Knowing that getting angry was not going to help matters. "Alright," he said as he stood up from the chair. "It has been a hectic night for all of us, so I think it's best we all head home for the night," Minato said. He then looked to his 3 present children. "Teams will be assigned in a week's time. Be at the academy at 10 am sharp," he said to them as the 2 sons and daughter stood up along with Kushina as they and Ikka left the office. When they were gone, Minato looked to Hiruzen with a serious look. "I swear, Hiruzen," he growled, "old friend of yours or not, if I find proof that it was him, I'll personally kill the mummy son of a bitch, myself." Hiruzen, sighing tiredly, spoke in a neutral tone. "If Dansum truly is behind the problems that you have had with your son, then we must tread lightly, Minato," he said. "We need to find some serious incriminating evidence that it was truly him. In order to do that, you must read his next move, and when you have him cornered, only then do you strike." Minato nodded at the advice of the former Kage. "I know," he said and gave a tired grin to the old man. "I knew I made the right choice in making you my advisor. Unlike your former teammates, you don't pretend that your actions are for the good of the village. When you say those words, you truly mean them." Hiruzen chuckled deeply at that. "Minato, I may love the village like my own family, but there are times when the head of the family has to put their foot down and tell the quarreling members to sit down and shut up," he said humorlessly before he and his successor began to laugh at the truth of it all. The 2 men stopped laughing and Hiruzen sighed before lighting his pipe and began to speak again. "Why don't you go home, Minato?" he said. "The paperwork isn't going anywhere and you need to be with your family right now. Take the day off tomorrow." Minato nodded in agreement at that. "Thank you, Hiruzen," he said before looking at the seemingly never-ending pile of paperwork. "I don't know how I would manage if you weren't here to help," he said, smiling before he passed the former Kage a small bottle of sake, to which the old man nodded his thanks before Minato disappeared in his signature yellow flash. XXXX. 3 days had passed since the whole Mizuki incident, and in that time things at the Uzumaki Namika's home had gotten back to normal, or as normal as things could get. Naruto and Kunga had decided to tell Minato and Kushina about their summon contracts, but only the basics. Both brothers thought it best to keep some things to themselves and others secret for as long as they could. This seemed to put most fears to rest and answer most of the questions had by Minato and Kushina. Things even seemed to get a bit better since Naruto learned that his family had been under a Jinjutsu this whole time. While he still hadn't forgiven them fully, he felt that some good faith was earned, which had prompted him to tell them about his summon contract that Kuga had told him it would make things less awkward between Naruto and his parents, and in the end, he had taken his brother's advice and told them. Deciding to try and be a little more open, Naruto took his sisters up on an offer of going shopping with them and Kushina for new clothes that week. The girls, however, came up with the idea as a way to get closer to Naruto and spend some time with him. As they walked the streets of the village, they talked about who they hoped to be put on a team with. Well, Kushina had told them that they needed to be ready to work with anyone because the team placement could put them with anyone in their class. When they finally reached their destination, they stopped in front of a store called Shinobi Style with kunai knives, as the is in the sign, while a shuriken that was made to look like it was sticking out at an odd angle made the Y. The bell tinkled as they entered the store, and a woman came out from the back and asked if they needed any help. When she saw it was Kushina and her daughter, she smiled. "Well, it'll be if it isn't Kushina. I was wondering when you would be back. Come to get some ninja gear for your girls." The women asked, seeing Narumi and Mito. "Nice to see you too, Rika, and yes, we're here to get gear for them and Naruto," Kushina said, motioning to her son. The women walked around the counter and walked over to Naruto, smiling as she stuck out her hand and said, "It's nice to finally meet you. I've been wanting to for a long time." Naruto took the outstretched hand and shook it, replying, "It's nice to meet you too, Rika-san," he said before her smile turned a bit too mischievous, like how Anko's face would get before she would prank Naruto. As she reached up with her other hand and took a small handful of the boy's hair and pulled just enough to make Naruto wince in pain. Still smiling, she spoke in a slightly oversweet voice, "Naruto, none of this and business, just call me Rika, okay?" Naruto responded with a slightly pained yes. At this she let go of his hair and her smile shifted back to genuine as she ruffled his hair and turned back to Kushina. Rika asked if they were looking for anything specific. Kushina smiled and replied, "We need to get clothes for both Naruto and the girls." Rika caught the fact that she had singled Naruto out by name and that the girls were smiling as they looked over some of the clothes in the store. She smirked inwardly. This was all just a ruse to get Naruto to spend time with them outside the home and hopefully bring them closer together. The boy didn't seem to notice this, or maybe he did and just didn't mention it out loud. Rika couldn't help but giggle just a bit. She also noticed that Menma and Kuga weren't here with them. She was about to ask, but before she could, Kushina said, "Menma already went shopping a day or two ago and got some clothes, so he doesn't need any, and Kuga told me that he would go shopping with us on another day." Rika noticed the tone to Kushina's voice, and she had been told before by Kushina about how the Uzumaki Namikaze boys got on and that Naruto and Menma didn't seem to get along well, so she decided not to push the topic. Kushina was trying to keep her sons from having a fight and to help bring her estranged son closer together with her and his sisters. Rika had been one of the people who had not been totally affected by the Jinjutsu, however she had never made an effort to talk to the boy as he had never come in her shop till one day when he was looking in her shop window for a second when she went to ask him if he wanted to come inside and browse. The boy was gone. Now having him in her shop, she wondered how to get him to open up. "So, do you have any ideas of what you would like, Naruto?" Rika asked, looking at the boy. "I don't really know. What do you suggest?" Naruto commented, looking around. Rika smiled at this and decided to get the girls involved. "I think we need to get you a style all your own, don't you think so, you three?" Looking at the girls. Kushina smiled at this, as did her two daughters. The three looked at the boy and Kushina spoke, "That sounds like a great idea. Do you have any colors you would like, Naruto?" The boy thought about it for a minute before responding, "I like blue and orange." Kushina quirked an eyebrow at the color choices but wanted to let him make the choice himself as she remarked, "Any others?" The boy put his chin in his hand as he thought before he replied, "Black." Rika smiled and answered, "We can work with that, but I think it will be easier if we give you some outfit pairings and see what looks the best on you." After several outfits, Naruto walked out with the latest and the girls all gave an answer of approval as Naruto was told to look in a mirror. The boy stood there in an outfit consisting of a midnight blue almost black in the right light shirt. It had an orange Uzumaki spiral, the main concession to his color choice of orange, with two small orange stripes on the edge of his sleeves. Along with a pair of light gray ninja cargo shorts and a pair of shinobi shoes. Naruto had also seen a pair of wrist guards that were dark blue and had underlayer of armor to them. He had asked about them and Rika told him that they would go well with the outfit as well as add a layer of protection. All in all, the outfit looked good on him and the girls all gave their approval. After which Kushina paid for Naruto's clothes and the clothes the girls had picked out. After which the foursome went to lunch. When they arrived at Ichiraku's, they found Minato and the other two Uzumaki Namikaze boys who had just finished ordering lunch. Seeing his wife and the rest of his kids enter, he smiled. Letting the four of them get seated and place their orders for lunch. When all was done he finally posed his question. "So, did you guys have a good time?" he asked smiling at his wife. "We did and we got Naruto a new look, what do you think?" Kushina asked looking at her husband, to which Minato looked at his son and had to admit Naruto looked good in his new outfit. Manma however sniffed and asked, "Why? It's not like Naruto is going to be put on a team." Both Kushina and Minato looked at their son and told him if he didn't have anything nice to say to keep it to himself. Menma was still of the idea that while his brother had come back, he won't be apologizing to his older brother anytime soon, not until Naruto is able to stand as his equal. Though in a small part of Menma's heart, he honestly did want to become close to his brother again, but that part was having trouble with the part of him that had been able to take hold thanks to the whole situation that had led up to this point. Little did he know however that Naruto was already a match for him if not better. The reason being that Menma was oblivious to this fact was that Naruto had never wanted to stand out at the academy due to the fact that it would raise too many questions that he felt didn't need to be asked, not until he was ready to share the answers to them. But with every plan there is always a chance that someone will catch on to what you are doing. And it seemed that Orochimaru had noticed that something was up. Even before this whole incident with Mizuki. Flashback. Naruto had gone to Ichiraku's for lunch that day, only when he walked up he was met by someone that was a bit too smart to not see a pattern. Orochimaru greeted Naruto and asked if he was getting ramen, to which Naruto had nodded. The snake sage asked if it was okay if he joined him, and Naruto said yes as the two entered AM, saw her favorite blonde, and smiled greeting the two as they sat. Naruto ordered a bowl of tonkatsu with extra chashu and kakuni, while Orochimaru ordered a simple chicken ramen bowl with miso. The two sat in silence for a few before it was broken by a question. "Naruto, may I ask you a question?" Orochimaru asked. Naruto just looked at him for a second before he answered, and what question might that be? Answering the question with one of his own. "I know you have only been back 3 months, but I would like to ask about how things are going at the academy." The snake sage asked, hoping the blonde would be up for sharing. "What about the academy?" Naruto again answered the question with one of his own. "It's about you, more specifically your performance at the academy," Orochimaru stated as he continued. "You seem to be somewhat of an enigma to your instructors, as you seem to be the same as any average student who attends the academy." Naruto raised an eyebrow, and is that bad? He asked, wondering where his godfather was going with this. "No, many ninja who were average in the academy have gone on to be good shinobi," he said, "but it makes you seem like you are hiding something, since many of them think you are holding back when it comes to how you perform." Naruto just shrugged and looked at the older ninja. "I don't know what to tell you," he said as he got up. Having finished his food he went to pay, but his godfather stopped him and put down money for the both of them. Flashback end. After this Naruto had put a bit more effort in at the academy, which increased his scores a bit, but not enough to make much of a difference on his rating. It was just to make it look like he was really just that average. But some of the instructors there still didn't buy it, and neither did Orochimaru. Even now, going over team assignments with Minato in the Hokage's office, he couldn't help but ask himself the question, "Naruto, what are you not telling us, and why are you trying to hide your real level of skill from us?" "So, Minato, what do you think of these for the potential team builds?" Orochimaru asked, showing Minato a diagram with multiple different team compositions, ranging from tracking, assault, and support. After pointing out the candidates that would only be able to fill one role due to their skill set, then he brought out a chart showing the candidates that could fill multiple roles in a squad. "So far the teams look great, thank you, Orochimaru." Minato expressed his sincere thanks, as squad building in the past was a difficult process of basically putting genin together and seeing if they would work as a team or not. But with Orochimaru offering his insight into the matter, squads that have been assembled in the past couple of years have had a 92.7% rate of successful squad dynamics. But I am concerned about one thing. Orochimaru wasn't surprised since he had a sneaking suspicion as to what it was about though. "It's over your children, isn't it?" His suspicions were validated when Minato rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. "You caught me, Orochimaru. I wanted to know why Naruto's name isn't on any of the squad suggestions that you showed me." Orochimaru sighed hearing this from Minato as he knew it would be coming. "Minato, you and I both know that your oldest son was treated like he never existed by both his family and most of the village, myself included. Though we know now that it was due to a genjutsu that no one knew about, it is because of that he doesn't trust many people. He doesn't even fully trust you or your wife right now for that matter." Orochimaru stated, seeing how Minato was about to retort. He commented. "Do you know how he performed in the academy, Minato?" Hearing the question, Minato frowned and nodded his head, wondering where the Sannin was going with this. "I do, Orochimaru, from what I hear from practically everyone, he's about as average as they get at the academy. His performance on the written and physical exams bring passable marks, it's actually a surprise that he didn't place higher than he did," Minato said, his voice thick with guilt and shame at that fact. knowing full well that while his son had trained he didn't have anyone to teach him what he needed. But at the same time, he also wanted to know how is it that if his son was so average then how was Naruto already able to do some of the jutsu he had used and how had someone who seemed to be so unremarkable survived in the forest of death for so long. That being said, have you ever seen his actual scores and performance on the written and physical exams? Seeing Minato shake his head in the negative, Orochimaru took out Naruto's file and handed it to Minato. After taking it and opening, he didn't see what the snake sage was trying to hint at. Though he did frown a bit when he saw how his son did. Seeing that Minato didn't get it, he sighed. "You don't see it, do you, Minato?" he asked. "Isn't it suspicious that his grades aren't more varied? How on every single exam, physical and written, he has managed to score just enough points to put him in the average threshold. That alone warrants suspicion. It's as if he is deliberately trying to make himself look like the most average shinobi in order to conceal his strengths." He paused to let Minato think about it for a second. Minato thought about it for a second before responding, "Are you sure about this? After all we both know that he didn't have anyone to train him while he was in the forest of death." Now that I'm thinking about it more clearly and looking back at how after I talked to him about it his scores went up but not enough to change his placement, I'm sure that he's intentionally hiding his skills. Though for what reason, I'm not sure. Orochimaru said, his brows furrowed in thought. Minato just couldn't wrap his mind around why Naruto would intentionally hide his skill if he was as skilled as Orochimaru was making him out to be. But why hide his skills? I mean I get why he didn't want to tell us about the summon contract and all, but if he has the skill, why doesn't he show them to everyone? Minato asked only for Orochimaru give a hymn of acknowledgement. It sounds as if you're making him out to be a prodigy. If he was, he'd be the talk of the village. That's why I didn't place him with any of squads that I made, Minato. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but my personal assessment of him is that he's a potential risk. He trusts only a few people in the village and because of that has very little loyalty or love for the village either. As soon as Orochimaru finished his assessment, he was met with an angry and accusatory glare from Minato. What are you implying, Orochimaru? Are you saying that my son is a potential threat to his squad mates, his sensei, and possibly a threat to the village? Minato wasn't happy that Orochimaru thought of his son as a threat to the safety of his ninja and village. Menma's comment about how his brother wasn't going to be put on a team lingered in his mind. He knew that his son wasn't treated the best due to what had happened, but he won't betray the village, would he? Before the question could be answered, Ikao burst through the door to the office, startling the two as they were already on their feet and in a set of combat stances, but relaxed only a bit when they saw who it was, but the look on the Kunoichi's face said that it wasn't good. "Okage-sama, I need to talk to you now, it's about Naruto," Ikao said, making Minato feel chill run down his spine as he hoped that the earlier comment made by Orochimaru had not been an omen. Flashback. Ikao had been on her way to give Naruto his present for graduation from the academy. She had found them while looking for a set of gifts for her two surrogate little brothers and thought they would be perfect for Naruto, so she purchased the twin kamas. The pair were one of a kind since they were also chakra blades, and the craftsmanship and detail on them was beautiful. She had already given Kunga his gift earlier, which had been a custom wakizashi that was also a chakra blade made by the same smith. And she wanted to make sure Naruto got his present. Heading for the one place she knew he would be since no one else knew where he was at the moment, she soon found herself at the special training spot that both Naruto and Kunga used when they wanted to train by themselves or just be alone. She had found the spot by tracking Kunga from a distance as to not be spotted and or picked up by him with his sensory abilities if he had any. When the boy had stopped he had come to the clearing that she was headed for. Now she had found Naruto waiting for his brother and the two engaged in training, which had provided the perfect cover for her slip away by. Remembering the route to the spot, she soon found herself landing in the clearing. Only when she got there she was greeted by two voices, one that she knew to be Naruto's and one that she didn't recognize at all as they talked. She only caught the last bit of the conversation before Naruto had asked for the women he was with to sing. She gave him a look before sighing as she said okay. Ikao stilled as the women began to sing so beautifully it could have hypnotized anyone who heard her, it seemed. As she heard the song, Ikao could almost have sworn that she heard the music to the song playing as the woman sang. "Hush, child. The darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. Child, the darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. Son. It'll shape your belief. And you'll always know that your father's a thief. And you won't understand the cause of your grief. But you'll always follow the voices beneath. Loyalty, 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 loyalty. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty only to me. Son. Your spirit will hate her. The flower who married my brother the traitor. And you will expose his puppeteer behavior. For you are the proof of how he betrayed her loyalty. Loyalty, 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 loyalty. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty only to me. Hush, child. The darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. Child, the darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. Isla son. Each day you grow older. Each moment I'm watching my vengeance unfold. For the child of my body, the flesh of my soul, will die in returning the birthright he stole. Loyalty, 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 loyalty. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty only to me. Hush, child. The darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. Child, the darkness will rise from the deep and carry you down into sleep. When the song was finished, she heard Naruto comment that the women had one of the most beautiful voices that he had ever heard. As said women thanked him for the compliment. Ikao got close enough to see that Naruto had his head resting on the woman's leg as he lay on his side, with the two of them sitting next to the stream that wound its way through the area. Not wanting to startle them, Ikao used the body flicker technique to leave and race full speed to get to the Hokage's office. Then flashback. After reporting about what she had seen, it came as a shock when Minato's reaction was a bit underwhelming. Minato took in the knowledge about his son being with someone Ikao didn't recognize. However, that song he did recognize. It was a lullaby from a story Kushina would read to the kids when they were little. It was a fairy tale story. Minato also knew that Kushina had hummed and even sang that lullaby to the kids many a night when they couldn't sleep or were scared. If it wasn't his wife who was singing, then who was this woman? While he was mulling this over, Orochimaru thought about what had just been shared and if this woman was a treat to the village. Then an idea struck him and he decided to voice it. If we have Inoichi take a look at Ikao's memories, we can see who this person is, and if your wife or you know her, Minato. Very well, I will get Kushina and bring her here. Ikao, if you would be so kind as to retrieve Inoichi so we can determine what to do about this. Minato said, to which Ikao nodded her head and vanished again using body flicker. An hour and one mind walk later, whoever this woman was, none of them knew her, and that she was someone either Naruto knew well or she was playing him for a fool. However, Minato doubted the second of the two, as he knew very well that his son, while distant, had a way of knowing when and when not to trust someone. Also, Minato felt that if he didn't trust his son, it was almost in a way betraying all the work he put into trying to get back his son's trust. After having learned all they could from Ikao's memory, Minato told Inoichi he could go home. Minato offered to take Kushina home, but she told him she needed to think and the walk home would help her do just that. Now it was just him, Orochimaru and Ikao in his office. Seeing that Minato was feeling conflicted on this whole matter, not to mention trying to figure out just what his son was doing and who the woman was, Orochimaru decided to relent. Minato, assigned Naruto to a squad on the condition that. Before he could finish his statement, Ikao interrupted, saying, "Please Hokage-sama, I would like to be the sensei for Naruto's squad." Minato and Orochimaru blinked at the sudden outburst, but the idea appealed to Minato, he had to admit. It would be a way to keep an eye on his son and also help make him feel at ease by being around someone who he knew well. Orochimaru would have preferred to put Anko in charge of Naruto's squad, as she would be able to report on his mental state just from observation alone. The only others capable of this were himself, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Ibiki, and Shizune. But he didn't think that they should be removed from their posts for one genin, even if that genin is possibly unstable and the Hokage's son. But he did have to admit the idea of making Ikao Naruto's team sensei would be beneficial for several reasons. I know Naruto better than most in the village and can assess his mental state firsthand. I will be able to see if anything is amiss. Ikao stated, pushing for Minato's approval. Well, I think it could work if you think it is a good idea. Orochimaru stated. Minato thought about the situation deeply. On one hand, he wanted to trust his instincts that his son wasn't a threat, but considering what Orochimaru said about him trusting only a few people in the village was undoubtedly true, as he knew the list of people and it was a short one. Eventually he had to place his village over his son, as much as it pained him to do so, but he would do it his way. Alright Ikao, but I want to make two things clear. First, there will be no favoritism towards Naruto, seeing a wry smile on her face as he paused. He could only hope that this decision doesn't come back to bite him in the ass. After all, Ikao and Anko were good friends and shared some of the same hobbies and tendencies. Second, if anything is amiss, even if it seems trivial, don't hesitate to bring it to my attention. Am I clear? That smile never left Ikao's face as she replied, 100%. Well, now that we have that settled, let's rebuild the squads then. Starting with the ones who have the most flexibility in regard to possible positions. Orochimaru said as he brought out a rooster and proceeded to highlight and circle prime individuals. As they worked through the rest of the afternoon, Minato along with Orochimaru and Ikao, when asked to give recommendations for Naruto's team, reorganized the teams to make for the best pairing that would ensure the highest rate of survival for the young genin. XXXX. The day of team assignments finally came and Naruto and his siblings arrived at the academy on time as the rest of the students filed in until the whole class was there. A little bit later Iruka walked into the room and got the class to quiet down as their conversation stopped. He began to tell them that they were going to begin their journey on the road to being great shinobi and kunoichi. Now then Team 1 will be, and so, the long process of team assignment began. As this process went on, Naruto half listened to Iruka talk while he talked with Ku about who he hoped he would be placed with on a team. Though Ku told him that it won't matter who he got paired with, he would have to try and work with them. Even if it was someone he didn't get along with the best. As Iruka went on, he came to the squads that would have the most well-rounded genin teams. Team 7 will consist of Menma, Mito and Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze. Your sensei will be Kakashi Haddock. At this statement, many groans and complaints rang out about the newly dubbed strongest team, Team Hokage's kids. Though the three siblings named face-palmed at the unfortunate luck of having to stick with their siblings even when out on missions, and of having to deal with their perverted and habitually late older brother figure as their sensei. After quieting down the class once more, Iruka continued. Team 8 will consist of Hinata Haika, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburam. Your sensei, Kuranaiki. Team 9 is still in effect from last year. Team 10 will consist of Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Shinjai Akimichi. Your sensei, Asuma Sarutobi. At that, Ino practically broke the desk she was at when her head slammed onto it. Complaining about how she was put on the worst possible team, while behind her Shikamaru muttered a quiet troublesome. His eyebrow twitching slightly at the rude behavior of his students, Iruka could only sigh before continuing. Team 11 will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Sai sensei, Ryoichi. Though, he was once again interrupted when Sakura rose out of her seat with a shout as she pumped a fist in the air, claiming that the power of true love prevails over all obstacles, as Sasuke let his head drop. For the final time, Iruka could only hang his head at his students' behavior before calling out the final team. The final team will be Team 12, which will consist of Yakumo Kurama, Kunga, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Your sensei, Ikao Yuzuki. Iruka then announced that their sensei would be coming to pick them up soon. That caught Naruto by surprise as he wondered if his dad had done this on purpose to keep an eye on him, or was it his dad's way of trying to help him out. White seemed to fall over the room as several of the other students looked back at Naruto before they, along with the rest of the students, got up and moved to group up with their respective teammates. As Iruka left the room, conversations broke out among the small groups. As Kunga slid over a seat to sit beside his brother, a girl with brown hair braided on one side and light brown eyes approached the two. She wore a stylish but functional purple kimono-style top that had the sleeve on the left cut short, while the sleeve on the right was longer around the shidder. Waist was a pink sash and a blue skirt underneath. She wore red mesh leggings and a red mesh shirt. Hi, I am Yakumo Kurama, she said, giving a slight bow as she continued. It looks like we are going to be teammates. Naruto and Kunga both nodded and asked her to sit next to them. As she sat down, Yakumo couldn't help thinking about Naruto. Did he really go into the forest of death like Narumi and Mito claim he did, and if so, how had he survived? Also, if Naruto had made it out of that supposed death trap, then why was he so average? These thoughts played in her mind as she sat next to him as they waited for their sensei to arrive. Being one of the few people who hadn't been affected by the mass Genjutsu, she had noticed how people just seemed to ignore Naruto. Even his sisters ignored him, even avoided him at times, which she thought was weird. When she had asked Narumi why, her friend told her that every time she would get close to her brother, it was like an overwhelming sense of fear would wash over her. Ikumo had thought she was being absurd, but after having seen the way Naruto was treated by the village and his family, she was not surprised when Narumi told her that Naruto had ran away. But now that he was back, it seemed like whatever had been causing Narumi to feel that sense of fear was gone. Honestly, when she had been told that it had been Genjutsu, many of the pieces that she had been missing had fallen into place, and now she knew why things had been so rough for Naruto. She had made a promise when he had gone into the forest that if he ever came back she would befriend him, and now being put on his team gave her the opportunity to keep her promise. After half an hour of waiting, most of the teams had been picked up by their sensei, and only 3 teams were left. Then a woman with purple hair stepped through the door. Ikao smiled as she saw her 2 surrogate younger brothers, and they smiled back. As she took note of who was left, she made a mental note that if Kakashi was as late as he normally was, she was going to burn his stash of Itchy Itchy Paradise books while she made him watch. At that moment, somewhere in the Leaf Village, a certain masked shinobi felt a chill run up his spine as he felt that his beloved book collection was in danger. With that mental note made, she commented for Team 12 that she was their sensei and for them to follow her. As the 3 got up to follow her, Naruto made a shadow clone and gave him a piece of paper and told him to read it when after they left. The rest of his siblings and the others waiting quirked an eyebrow at what that was all about, but eventually shrugged and went back to waiting. Ikao didn't ask what the clone was all about, she simply told the three that she had to use the bathroom and went inside. When she did, she placed a sound seal and made a shadow clone who used the transformation jutsu to take the form of a fly. As she released the sound seal, she flushed the toilet and washed her hands to make it look real. When she walked out, the fly left, as well as the four of them left. The fly made its way to the room where the others were waiting. As she entered through the open window above the door, only to find the clone setting up an elaborate trap on the door. Only the clone and the other three Uzumaki Namika's kids were left. As Ikao's clone saw what he was doing, she approved and decided to watch the result of Naruto's trap and settled in to wait. Leading the three out of the school and took them to a local park and sat down on the stone steps that lead to a small pond. Ikao looked at each of them and said, "Okay, I want each of you." Before she could finish her statement, she was hugged to the ground by Naruto, as Kunga just smiled, as Yakumo never thought she would see Naruto ever show so much emotion. Ikao smiled as she got up with Naruto still hugging her. "It's good to see you too, both of you, but you are confusing Yakumo," Ikao said as she motioned to the confused girl. Naruto scratched the back of his head and moved to sit back down. "Pardon my Otanto's action, but we are close," Ikao said as she looked at her students. Yakumo was puzzled at the statement, as she knew Naruto and Ikao were not related, but let it slide as she recalled how the boy had hugged her. Maybe she and he saw each other as family. "Now, as you all already know, my name is Ikao Yuzuki and I will be your sensei. Now I would like each of you to give your name, likes, dislikes, and goals for the future. I will start. As I have already told you, my name, my likes are moon watching, Kinjutsu, my surrogate younger brothers here, and a certain someone who I will not tell you about." Naruto snickered a bit at this, but a small glare from Ikao shut him up, which caused Kunga to smile at his brother's predicament as she continued. "My dislikes are hypocrites, rapists, sexists, and child abusers. My dreams for the future are to marry that certain someone and training you three into great shinobi." She smiled at the end as she looked at them all. "Now, who wants to go next?" she asked. Naruto raised his hand only to start before she could say anything. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. My likes are ramen, training, wolves, and Anchan. My dislikes are hypocrites, rapists, sexists, child abusers, and poachers. My dream for the future is to become a strong ninja and to prove I am worth something to the rest of my family." Ikao nodded at that, knowing fully well that Naruto's resolve was not to be doubted, since she also knew where his resolve came from. Kunga went next, as he was next in line of the group. "My name is Kunga Uzumaki Namikaze. My likes are ramen, training, Anchan, and shogi. My dislikes are the same as my brothers. My goal for the future is to become as strong a ninja as I can become and to find a nice girl and start a family someday." The last part of his statement surprised both Yakumo and Ikao. They would have never thought that the boy would want to start a family. After Kunga finished, Ikao turned to Yakumo and said, "Looks like you're up, tell us about yourself." At this, Yakumo felt like a bug under a microscope, but it could have been worse. Yakumo knew that if she froze now, it would only show that she was not fit to be a leaf shinobi. "My name is Yakumo Kurama. My likes are reading, training with my tutor Kurenai sensei, Machi, and being with my family. I also dislike perverts, rapists, people who mock others for stupid reasons or reasons outside of their control, and people who look down on genjutsu users. My goal is to repay Minato and Kushina-sama for helping me to subdue the idol that was inside my mind, giving me back my life, and to surpass Kurenai-sensei as a genjutsu master." Wanting to surpass Kurenai, that's a tall order for sure, but this girl seems determined as heck. Ikao thought as she looked at the girl. After a moment, she looked at the three of them and commented, "Good, very good," she said, before her face turned serious. "Now for you to know something. The graduation test you took last week is not a real graduation test." This caused the trio to blink in surprise. "What do you mean that it wasn't the real test, Anchan?" Naruto asked, confused at her statement. "Just like I said, the test you all took was not the real test. The real test has a 66% failing rate and only 3 or 4 teams will pass," she said as she continued. "Now then, I want you three to arrive at training ground 12 tomorrow at 7:30 am sharp. Eat light, because if you don't, you'll regret it." They nodded, showing that they understood. "Good, then you have the rest of the day to yourselves," she said and disappeared, leaving behind a few leaves that were blown away with the breeze. After Ikao left, the three young shinobi in training looked at each other before Naruto asked, "You two want to get some ramen or something? We can talk and learn what each of us can each do while we eat." Ikumo and Kunga both nodded, and soon the three of them were off to Ichiraku Ramen. When they entered the little ramen stand, Am was putting down the box that she had been moving and turned to see the threesome sit down. "Naruto, it's good to see you. I was wondering when you would be back. Oh, and this must be the rest of your team, right?" Am asked in her normal bright manner. "Yup, and Anchan is our sensei," Naruto said as he picked up a menu to see what he wanted to order. "That's wonderful," she said as she opened the box that she had just set down. "It's good to see you too, Kunga. How have you been lately?" Nga smiled as he replied, good, and you? AM gave him a smile as she said, really good since one of my favorite customers has been back. At this the two of them laughed. Oh, how rude of me, my name is AM and what's your name? She asked as Yakumo looked from Naruto and Kunga to AM. Yakumo Kurama, I take it you all know each other? She asked as AM nodded an affirmative to her question. Yup, I've known these two and the rest of their family for a long time, since the whole of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan seems to love ramen. AM said as the two boys looked over at her with mock expressions of sarcasm on their faces. Now that's just not true, AM-chan, we don't love ramen, we just happen to like it a lot. Kunga responded. AM, Naruto, and Kunga cracked up with laughter at the statement, and even Yakumo found their laughter infectious as she too joined in their moment of humor. When the four of them finally calmed down, AM took their orders and served them their food. When asked about where her dad was, she told them that he was out on a supply run and would be back later. As the trio talked over their bowls, they talked about their strengths and weaknesses. They also told each other a little bit more about themselves. When all was done and they had finished their ramen and learned a little bit more about each other, as they left the trio said that they would do their best on tomorrow's test and headed for home. Back at the academy, Kakashi was merely walking down the hall of the academy, silently reading his newest addition to his library. If one did not know who he was from the many rumors that surrounded him, people would say that he was a shinobi only for the benefits of being one. However, people who knew Kakashi knew that this was one small way of how he honored one of his friend's memories. Stopping beside the door, Kakashi could feel a small amount of killer intent rolling off all three genin. Wondering what his surrogate siblings had planned to do as punishment because of his tardiness, Kakashi created a shadow clone and had it walk through the door. After the clone disappeared and the memories came back to him, it caused him to flinch as he was now extremely glad that he created said clone. He knew he was late, but that was one thing he didn't want to repeat, be it memory or for real. What greeted his sense of sight was a semi-war zone, as several different types of kunai scattered the lower and upper wall near where the clone had been. Ninja wire also scattered the floor, a little more around the middle of the small pile. Note to self, never piss off I-sensei's kids again, he thought to himself as he remembered how bad it was to have the ninja wire cutting into his genitals as it tied him up in a very painful way. Not only that, but his favorite book had been soaked in what looked like oil. Where had they even gotten the oil from? Kakashi could only guess before a match struck a hard surface before lighting the wire and his favorite book. As Kakashi walked through the door, a note was laying on the floor. The white-haired ninja bent to pick it up. When he turned the note over and read it, a chill went down his spine. Dear Kakashi. If you are reading this message, then you used a shadow clone or a substitution to take the fall for my trap like I figured you would. Hope it was a clone so that way you at least know what it felt like since shadow clones transfer memory. This is your only warning before something bad happens to that pile of smut you call a book collection. Try to be on time from now on. Oh, and this is just me telling you what I will do, no telling what An-chan would do to you, so if I don't burn that smut you can bet she will, or she will do something much worse. Sincerely, Naruto. P.S. And don't you bother with some lame excuse about a black cat crossing your path or how you got lost on the road to life on your way to meet your team. You are a Jonin, and now a sensei act like it. At this point two things went through Kakashi's mind as he looked up from the note. One, nothing could be worse than having his prized book collection be burned, he would rather die than have that happen. Two, where was Naruto? Looking around the room to see if he could figure out where Naruto was hiding, because there was no way he would miss a chance to view his handiwork in person. As he looked around, said blonde's clone in fly form decided to have some fun as he buzzed by Kakashi's ear and landed on the back of his neck, only for the clone to be dispelled when Kakashi slapped himself on the back of the neck to try and kill the supposed fly. Ikao's clone, who had also taken a fly form on the other hand, flew out the open window and dispelled itself where no one would see it. Kakashi thought that he must have missed and that the fly flew off to somewhere else, looking now to the three genin, who were all somewhat amused by their brother's antics. Even Menma Kakashi told them to meet him on the roof and that he would be waiting before disappearing in a puff of smoke. When Naruto got the memory from his clone and the look on Kakashi's face, he found he couldn't stop grinning as they continued to walk home. Kunga noticed this and asked, "What's so funny?" To which Naruto replied, "Nothing, I just remembered something that I found funny, that's all." XXXX. When morning came, Naruto woke early and got ready for the test that day as he headed for the bathroom. While he still had the chance, when you live in a house with 4 other siblings, the line for the shower can get long, but as luck would have it, the Uzumaki Namikaze estate had 3 bathrooms, 2 of which were for the kids, and the third was the master bath that was off of Minato and Kushina's room. After a quick shower, Naruto dressed in his new clothes and head for the kitchen to get something light for breakfast. As he entered the kitchen, he found Kunga already there eating a small bit of fruit. Salad and that his brother had made 2 bowls, one of which he pushed over to the seat next to him. Naruto smiled and accepted the bowl which he ate with gusto. One thing that Naruto knew was that his brother may not have been as good as their mom, but he was still pretty good when it came to cooking. That is if you could call fruit salad cooking. After they finished their meal, the 2 boys got the rest of their gear that they would need for the test, strapping their kunai pouches and such into place. They both headed for the front door, only for Kushina to be waiting by it. When she saw them, she smiled and hugged them as she told them, "Good luck and do your best." With that, she stepped back and watched as they walked out the door and headed to training ground 12. Along the way, Yakumo met up with the 2 brothers and the trio made their way to the training ground together. When they got to the training ground, it happened that they were about 20 minutes early, but that didn't bother the three as they knew they were going to be early when they had left for the training ground. When they did, since they had a bit of time to burn, Kunga took out a small storage scroll and unsealed a shogi game that was already in progress and sat down with Naruto sitting opposite him to finish the match. Yakumo sat down next to them and asked when they had started the game, to which Naruto replied, "Last night." While this was going on, Ikka watched from a tree in the forest of the training ground, pleased that her team had shown up early. It showed that they took this seriously. Having shown up about 5 minutes before her team, Ikka had wanted to get some peace and quiet to herself, but she didn't mind sharing it with the young genin, as she wanted to see how they would act without her around. And so far it seemed like her team got on just fine. Little did she know that Naruto had picked up on her chakra when they had arrived there. He just didn't tell the others, because why spoil the look that he would get from his An-chan when he told her he knew where she was the whole time. After 20 minutes had passed, Ikka entered the clearing of the training ground and walked over to her team. "It's good to see you all here and early. That is also good. That means that you take this seriously," Ikka said as she looked at the 3 genin. "An-chan, you were in the trees the whole time watching us," Naruto stated, which made Ikka and Yakumo blink and stare at him, while Kunga just smiled, knowing full well that his brother was a sensory type and that compared to Naruto, Kunga wouldn't even come close to matching his skill in this field. Though he knew how to sense chakra, his sensing abilities were not as sharp as Naruto's. Ikka was slightly in shock at the fact that Naruto was able to sense her like it was something casual, but then again, this is Naruto after all. The boy who defies logic, she thought to herself. "Okay, since it seems that everyone is obviously ready to start, let's go over the rules," Ikka said as she pulled 2 silver bells from her pocket and dangled them in front of her genin. "The rules to this test are simple. All you have to do is get these bells from me before the timer runs out," she stated, setting a clock timer on the stump that she stood next to, said clock already ticking. "If none of you get a bell by lunch, then you will be tied to one of the 3 stumps while I eat my lunch, and after that you will have a second chance to get the bells. If you fail, then you will be sent back to the academy," Ikka stated, attaching the bells to her belt. This made Yakumo flinch while Kunga just frowned, thinking to himself that there were only 2 bells, and that would mean that no matter who got the bells, one of them would be going back to the academy, which would mean that this test was not truly about the bells. If that was the case, then it had to be about something else. Naruto was already thinking the same thing and had already come to the conclusion that the test was about what they could do as team, not who got the bells. If that was the case, then they needed to work out a plan and fast. "Oh, and one last thing, come at me with everything you have, cause if you don't you won't win," Ikka stated, looking the 3 of them in the eyes, and the test already started. At this, the 3 genin scattered into the trees. Once in the trees, Naruto and Kunga decided that they needed to meet up with Yakumo, but it would be too easy for Ikka to find them if they grouped up. So, they both made shadow clones and sent them to where they could sense her chakra was coming from. Yakumo was crouched behind a tree that gave her a view of Ikka that was uninterrupted. She needed a plan to get one of the bells from her sensei, or she was headed back to the academy, and she had worked too hard for it all to be for nothing. While she had been focused on what was in front of her, she missed Naruto and Kunga's clones as they came up behind her, startling her, which caused Yakumo to squeak, or that would have been the case if not for the fact that Naruto's clone clamped his hand over her mouth. "Think you can give a girl a warning next time?" Yakumo asked, staring at them like she was going to kill them herself. "I nearly had a heart attack." "Sorry, but this was the easiest way to fill you in on what's up with this test," Kunga's clone stated, which made Yakumo frown. "The test is all about getting the bells," Yakumo claimed, like it was so obvious. "No, the bells may be part of the test, but they aren't the true goal of the test," Naruto's clone stated. "The true test is about working together as a team to get the bells." "But there are only 2 bells," Yakumo countered, "so even if we work as a team, one of us will be headed back to the academy. That's the point of the test. The bells are to divide us, so we focus more about ourselves than our teammates," Kunga's clone replied. Yakumo blinked at this and face-palmed at the fact that she fell for something as simple as this, but that was the whole point. The simplest tricks were the ones that worked best. "Okay, so what's the plan then?" Yakumo asked, hoping that the brothers had something up their sleeves. I think it's time we pull a sneaky fox. Naruto's clone commented, to which Yakumo raised an eyebrow, while Kunga's clone just chuckled looking at the other clone. A sneaky fox? Yakumo questioned, her mind drawing a blank at the phrase. Do you really think it will work? I mean, we haven't pulled one of those in a long time. Kunga's clone asked, to which Naruto just smiled. What's a sneaky fox? Yakumo asked, starting to get annoyed. That's why I am sure it will work, after all we never really pulled one on Anchan. Naruto's clone said, still holding his smile. Okay, that's it. What is a sneaky fox? Yakumo hissed out, drawing both of her teammates' attention. Have you ever heard the phrase, the wolf is in the hen house? Kunga's clone asked Yakumo. Yakumo frowned at this. After all, it was a common saying, replying, of course, who hasn't? Well, the wolf is making a scene out in the hen house as the farmer runs outside. The fox sneaks in and steals dinner off the table. Naruto's clone answered. Yakumo had to admit it was a solid plan, but would it work? Their sensei was a genin after all, would she fall for such a simple ploy? If it was that simple, then this test wouldn't have such a high failure rate. But if the point of the test was to see if the team could work together, then they had already passed the test. So, who is the fox and who is the wolf? Yakumo asked, still not sure about how this plan is going to work out. The wolf here is actually two wolves, and that is just the start. Naruto's clone said as the trio hatched their plan. After 25 minutes of standing there, Ikao was starting to think that her three students were getting cold feet and were not sure if they should make a move, but she knew Naruto better than that he wouldn't run, he would try to find a way to fight back. However, before she could go further down that rabbit hole of thought, Ikumo stepped out of the woods alone. This, of course, made Ikao start to shake her head, but stopped when she saw that something was wrong. Ikumo was holding her head in both her hands as she stumbled forward as a purple haze flowed from her mouth as it solidified into a humanoid form. She had read about this. Ikumo had a being inside her known as the Ido, and it was so strong that the genjutsu it cast could cause real damage. Ikao knew she had to act fast if she wanted to protect her student, but when she tried to get close, she was restrained by a tree that sprang up out of the ground to wrap its limbs around her. Looking on at her student who was about to be killed, a piece of information popped into her head that she had read from the girl's file about the Ido. The file had said that being had been absorbed by her, so that she no longer had to worry about it running rampant anymore, so that it couldn't hurt anyone like it tried to do with her parents. Ikao now understood what was going on. This was a distraction in the form of a genjutsu, which she knew how to break out of those. Releasing the genjutsu, however, brought her back to her senses and also brought her face to face with a small group of Naruto clones running straight at her. This surprised her at the fact that she had not expected Naruto and Yakumo to work together. If anything, she had thought that the brothers would have teamed up since they knew her fighting style well enough that they could have had a small chance at beating her. She was even more surprised at how fast and strong Naruto had gotten since she had last seen him before he went into training ground 44. The group of clones was actually pressing her hard with their combined attacks and had even gotten in a few good hits. When did he get so strong? She thought to herself as Naruto's next strike was blocked. The one thing that Ikao knew though was that she was always better at Kenjutsu as she cut down clone after clone, only for the real Naruto to pull back and run through a set of hand signs for a jutsu. As 4 of the Naruto clones formed up, throwing shuriken at her as the real Naruto called out, wind-style gale palm. A blast of wind shot from his hands which propelled the shuriken even faster to their target. Ikao would have dodged out of the way of this attack if not for the shout of wind-style great breakthrough. Coming from behind her as a Naruto clone sent a strong gust of wind at her back, which sent her hurtling straight towards the oncoming shuriken. The shuriken impacted with their target only for her to vanish in a puff of smoke. As the real Ikao came up from the ground next to the clone who had just hit her and cut him down. Turning to Naruto, she smiled as she heard a twig break behind her. She ducked Yakumo's strike and used the girl's momentum as she grabbed her arm and threw her at Naruto. Naruto raised his hands as Yakumo did a quick flip, so her foot was aimed at Naruto's palms, which she used as a springboard to propel herself back at her sensei, who she locked eyes with for a shot bit as Ikao leaned back, which allowed Yakumo to pass straight over and past her, doing a quick roll on. The landing to burn off the momentum, she came up in a crouch as he long sleeve coming back to reveal wrist-mounted senbon launcher firing 5 senbon at Ikao. As she came up, the senbon hit their mark only for it to be a Naruto clone that disappeared in a puff of smoke. The real Ikao stood where the now gone Naruto clone used to be. She smiled as she said. Congratulations to you and Yakumo for coming up with a solid plan, but you're going to have to do better than that. As soon as these words left her mouth, a smoke bomb hit her from behind and caused her to stumble. Recovering her balance, she felt a tug at the spot where the bells were located. As she darted out of the smoke cloud, she looked down to see that both bells were still there, but now Kunga was standing with Naruto and Yakumo. Ikao smiled that the three had worked out this little plan. Ikgao shook her head as she looked at the trio and said, well, I guess that this means that the three of you can work together, that means you. She trailed off as a small red fox run up to Kunga to have it scurry up his leg and end up sitting on his shoulder with both bells in its mouth. She looked down to see that both bells were missing now. Ikgao blinked as the fox lowered its head as Kunga reached up to take the bells from its mouth. Nodding at it, the little fox jumped down from his shoulder and vanished in a puff of samki. When she saw this, she smiled. Well played indeed. So, who are you giving the other bell to? Ikgao questioned. Kunga looked at her, then tossed the bells to Naruto and Yakumo, who caught them and in turn tossed them back to Ikgao, who caught the bells and smiled at this outcome. We did this as a team. If you send one of us back, you send all of us back. Naruto stated as Yakumo and Kunga stepped up to stand next to him, showing they agreed with his statement. Very well, you all pass. Ikgao said, making the three teammates smile. You three are now officially Team 12. Take the rest of the day off because tomorrow the real training and work starts. The trio asked Ikgao if she would join them for a meal to commemorate them becoming a team, to which she said that she would meet them later for food. Right now she had to make a report to the Hokage and left using body flicker. XXXX. Ikgao arrived at the Hokage's office to find several other Jonin there, as well as the Hokage. As she looked around, she noticed that Kakashi was not there as the meeting started with each sensei who had been given a team making their report about if their team of Genin passed or failed the test they were given. One by one the sensei presented their reports. When about half of the sensei had made their reports, Kakashi showed up and waved to everyone with a causal yo, like he wasn't just showing up a half hour late. Turning to the Hokage, he continued, sorry I'm late, I got lost on the road of life. This statement caused everyone, including Minato, to face vault. Really, Kakashi? Asuma said as he shook his head after getting back to his feet. That excuse is so old nobody is using it anymore. Heck, most people don't even remember that one. Kakashi smiled nervously as he scratched behind his head. So Kakashi, how did they do? Minato said with a sigh. Well, Kakashi gave his report. They passed, not that I was expecting any other result, I mean they are your kids after all. The masked Jonin said as he smiled. Team 12 also passed Hokage-sama. They were pretty good for a couple of rookies. Their teamwork was well executed, but the most surprising thing was Naruto. At that statement, everyone's attention was focused on Ikgao. Minato's eyebrow raised at her statement and asked if she could continue, which she did. I knew he was fast, but since he came back from the forest of death, that kid is faster than ever. And I mean fast. I'd estimate that in terms of pure speed, has at least high Chunin to low Chunin. But that's not all, he hits pretty flippin' hard too. Lifting the sleeves of her shirt, Ikgao showed the light-colored bruises that spotted her arm. These were from Naruto. I'm not joking when I say he actually pushed me hard. The first move he made was a kick to the head, and I'm sure if I hadn't dodged it, I'd be in the hospital with a concussion right now. At the end of her report, everyone in the room was silent. The supposed most average kid of the academy managed to actually make the famed sword mistress of the leaf fight him like she meant it. That sent a shock through their systems, as well as curiosity as to what else he could have been hiding. Minato knew that he had to get to the bottom of that mystery when he got the chance. Though he doubted he would get very far since Naruto still didn't trust him fully, or most of the family for that matter. Thank you everyone. For the Genin who didn't pass, please notify them that they will be put on reserve until they are placed on a team. Alright. That's all I have. Thank all of you for your reports and meet me tomorrow for your squad's first mission. The next few weeks went by in a flash as the newly minted Team 12 was put through the ringer, as Ikgao set a grueling pace, as by the end of the first week of their second month, they had completed their 35th ranked mission. This fact astounded the other Jonin sensei. Instead of the usual 2 to 5 missions a week, Ikgao made her team complete a minimum of at least 7 missions a week. These missions included finding the daimyo's wife's cat, babysitting, running errands, catching the daimyo's wife's cat, helping a family move because the father had thrown his back out, helping the elderly ladies who needed someone to carry their groceries, finding lost items, and chasing down that damn cat. During their training, she rotated them between the 6 different topics which covered chakra control, taijutsu, kinjutsu, ninjutsu, jinjutsu, and their many types and facets, as well as team tactics. They would need to be well versed in each of these, the practice of which was beginning to shape them into a jack-of-all-trades sort of team which Ikgao had been planning on making them. Better to be safe than sorry was her train of thought, as she wanted her squad to be prepared for anything that could happen in the future. Plus, Ikgao didn't want to be stuck doing D ranks any longer than she had to be. Ikumo, who due to her slightly more frail body, was having a hard time with the physical exercises during training. Ikgao made sure to check and see if she was alright if she thought she was in danger, but she was beginning to get physically stronger with every session, to the joy of her parents and the pride of Ikgao. Kurenai, who was Ikumo's former trainer, even said that she was beginning to lose her pale and weak complexion and gain a more lively and strong one, which made said Kunoichi blush when she heard these words. On days off the team would often meet up for a meal or head to the training grounds for some sparring matches to see how far they had come with their training. Which was why Ikgao now knew that her genin were ready for their first C-ranked mission. Congratulations for another mission, well done Team 12. I assume that you want another mission, correct? Minato asked, handing the completed report to his assistant to be filed later. Kunga's right eye started twitching at the thought of doing more chores as he tried to keep his cool. Ikumo sighed, knowing that they'd be doing more manual labor in the coming hours. Naruto retained his blank look, but his eyes darkened a bit. Minato noticed the glint in Ikgao's eyes and immediately knew what kind of mission she was going to ask for. "We sure are, Hokage-sama. I think my cute little genin are ready for their first C-rank mission. We've completed the minimum number of 30 D-ranked missions, and I know that they'll be able to handle it." As the words left Ikgao's mouth, Kunga's lips broke into a slight smirk. Ikumo's eyes widened in excitement as she straightened her back and put on a determined face. Naruto's face still remained blank, but there was a little excitement in his eyes. Seeing the look of determination and excitement on the faces of the genin, Minato could only sigh and relent. Smiling, he agreed. "You're right, Ikgao, your squad has gone above and beyond when completing your missions, so I think you've earned this," Minato said with pride as he handed Ikgao a mission scroll. "It's a simple escort mission, but I think your team will be able to handle it. Alyssa-san, could you please let in Tazuna-san?" Turning towards the door, Minato called out to the secretary to let in their client. The door soon opened to reveal a gray-haired, bespectacled man. As soon as he reached them, he turned and gave them his evaluation of them. "I thought I paid to hire a team to escort me, not 2 boys, a little girl, and a woman. I bet those 3 kids haven't even touched a weapon and that woman hasn't been in a real fight," Tazuna said as he took a gulp from a small bottle of sake. At this comment Yakumo frowned, definitely not liking how he was implying that women were weak. Naruto and Kunga tried their best not to react, but they did clench their hands slightly. It turned out however they wouldn't have to because in the blink of an eye, Ikgao was in front of the old man with a kunai ready to take his manhood. "Tazuna-san, insult me or my cute genin again, and you will be returning to Wave Country in 2 pieces," Ikgao said with a smile on her face that one could only guess she learned from Anko. Before things could escalate any further, Minato immediately narrowed his eyes at Tazuna as he kept his voice level and spoke. Face-palming before he sighed, Minato looked up and addressed the older man. "Tazuna-san, I would appreciate it if you don't insult the people that will be escorting you. The ninja before you are more than capable of protecting you. This is one of my best teams, and Ikgao is one of my top kunoichi, as it just so happens she is an ex-Anbu member." At that information Tazuna and Yakumo both looked shocked, while Naruto and Kunga just smiled, having known this for a long time, since the 3 of them were close. Tazuna was shocked because he had someone of such caliber protecting him, and Yakumo because she didn't know that her sensei had held such a prestigious position. At all the attention she was getting, Ikgao couldn't help but blush slightly. "Geez, it's not like I am some sort of superhuman or something, many other kunoichi have made it to such a position before," she said with a grin, rubbing the back of her head in embarrassment. Eventually the tense atmosphere before returned to a tranquil one, Ikgao directing her genin. "Alright my cute little genin, we're meeting tomorrow at the main gate to head towards the land of waves. From the mission details, we're going to be escorting and guarding Tazuna-san while the wave complete a bridge. So, pack enough supplies for at least a month to be safe, alright?" After her instructions, her genin nodded and they were all dismissed. As Naruto walked out of his office, Minato quickly called out to him. Stopping near the door, Naruto turned around to face him. "Naruto, please be safe out there, okay?" Expecting him to just nod, Minato was surprised when Naruto responded to him, "I will be, thank you," Naruto said before he exited the room, leaving Minato to smile slightly before he returned to his paperwork. XXXX. At night after dinner while Kushina was doing the dishes, she seemed to be distracted as it had taken Minato 3 times just to get her attention. She couldn't help but wonder about what was happening with her sons. The unexpected conversation she had with the 9 tails still replaying in her thoughts. Flashback. The walk and the fresh air were helping Kushina, but not as much as she would have liked. She didn't know what to do or how to react to what had been happening since Naruto got back. Every time she thought she was making progress with him on getting him to open up, something would come up and make her think that she was even more in the dark about on where she stood in her relationship with her son. The news about this woman Naruto was seen with was just another in a long list of things that were piling up to add to the mountain of questions that surrounded what happened with her son. Would Naruto ever open up to her and the rest of the family? Where had he gotten his summon contract? Who was this strange woman? How did she know Naruto? Would they ever be able to all be a true family again like they had been before all of this? All these questions and more were going through her head as dusk was settling onto the village, and yet she couldn't help but think that this would not be the last time she would hear about something that happened with her son that he was keeping secret from them. In fact, now that she was thinking about it more, she realized Kunga was the only person who out of the whole family could claim to know Naruto the best, and even he was in the dark on some things as far as she knew and from what she had seen. As she was lost in her thought, she started to hear laughter, low at first and then getting louder and louder, as it seemed that only she was the one hearing it, as no one else who was out walking seemed to notice anything of the sort. Only to hear a low, deep voice that seemed to come from inside her head. If only you knew the truth about what has been happening to your family and how it is connected to Howie was sealed away all those years ago. The voice said, not needing to put much effort into trying to sound ominous, as the voice itself took care of that. Next thing Kushina knew, she was in her mindscape staring at the nine-tailed fox himself. "What do you want?" she asked, annoyed. Would she ever be rid of this blasted pain in the neck fox? "Nothing really, I just thought I should tell you that what happened all those years ago and what has been happening now aren't just mere coincidences," the fox said, smiling. "Well duh, it was no coincidence. The masked man wanted your power and my husband sealed you into 4 of my kids' case clothes," she said, only for the fox to start laughing again. "You really think that's all that happened? Oh, the irony of it all, that you don't even notice it is even more delicious than the fact that it is right in front of you," the nine-tailed said as he mocked her, laughing himself to death, or at least Kushina hoped he would. "How are you even talking to me? You were forced out of me and sealed in my kids," Kushina questioned the fox, shooting him a look of contempt. "I can talk to you because you once housed my being inside your body, also for the fact that a very small amount of my chakra lingers in your body, which is not only making it easier to communicate with you, but it is also how you were able to live through what happened all those years ago. Some of my chakra remains sealed in you through sheer force of will, though only the smallest bit," the Kikbi stated, still having that cat that ate the canary smile on his face. "I think a little thank you is in order. If not for my chakra you would have died that night." "Not on your life, so what now? You come to taunt me with the fact that you can bug me whenever you want. Or maybe you came to tell me that if this small amount of chakra is removed from my body that I will die. You should know me better than that. After all, you were my host for a good long while," the fox said, reminding her of the time she had spent as his host. "And no, the amount of my chakra that lingers in your body is not enough to kill you if it were to be removed, but it would hurt like hell, I assume. If you have a point, please get to it already," Kushina said, getting really irritated by the fox taunting her with what it knew. "Well, since you put it that way, you should know that my chakra was sealed into 5 vessels, not 4, if that gives you any hint," Kushina blinked as the Kikbi went on. "Naruto isn't the only one of your sons hiding something. It's another reason why they are so close, and yet another reason for why Naruto left the way he did. Naruto left because he was being ignored by us and almost the whole village due to a genjutsu, but he came back and we are trying to fix things with him," she shot back as the fox gave away nothing in his expression. "And what are you talking about? Minato sealed your chakra into 4 of my kids, kind of makes you sound like your memory is going bad." "That is where you are only half right. Naruto left for more than one reason, and as for what happened the night I was sealed, who else would be able to tell you where my chakra was sealed better than me?" the fox asked, not giving her a chance to answer as he went on. "Your sons are hiding more than you know, but don't take my word for it. After all, who would know them better than their mother, right?" the fox said as he faded Cheshire Cat style, leaving behind his eyes to fade last. Flashback end. "Kushina," Minato called for the 3rd time. Blinking, she looked over at her husband, who finally got her attention. Oh yes, what is it, honey? Are you okay, because you've been washing the same dish for over 4 minutes now?" Minato questioned as Kushina finally noticed that he was waiting for her to pass him the dish so he could dry it off. "Oh, sorry, I was lost in though," Kushina responded as Minato just smiled and took the dish from his wife. "I can see that, so rim for your thoughts?" Minato asked, smiling at his wife. "Haha, very funny, Minato," Kushina shot back. "No really, I am serious. Tell me, what is you spacing out so hard?" Minato said, looking at his wife with a look of worry in his eyes as he set the dish down now that it was dry. "It's Naruto," Kushina stated, looking at Minato. "Every time I think we are getting closer to being a normal family again, something comes out of left field and makes me feel like it's next to impossible. Kushina, Naruto has his secrets, as do we all, but he will open up to us when he is ready. Forcing him isn't going to help, and it will only make things worse if we try to pressure him into telling us," Minato stated as Kushina seemed to tense up a bit. "But what do we do if he won't talk to us?" Kushina questioned. "We do the one thing that we can do: be here for him when he needs us. When he needs someone to listen, someone to talk to, someone to confide in, and most importantly be here when he needs a home and when he needs love. It's the most important thing that we should have been doing from the start," Minato stated as he moved to hug his wife. "But we failed him," Kushina sobbed as tears formed at the edge of her eye. "We left him to fend for himself, we treated him as if he weren't even here, and when he needed us the most we acted horribly. How are we supposed to fix that?" she asked with a pleading look in her eyes as tears started to run down her cheeks. Besides that, the only person Naruto is likely to talk to of anyone in this family is Kunga, as he was the only one of us not affected by that cursed genjutsu. We may not be able to undo what has already happened, but we can change how we act and what we do in the future. Minato stated, wiping the tears from Kushina's eyes. Naruto has a place to come back to. We have made sure that he knows that. Not only that, but we have been working hard to get back his trust and he knows it. All we can do now is do the best we can and hope that the rest will work itself out in time. Mianto finished, still holding Kushina tight as he stroked her hair. Kushina couldn't help but think that all they could do wouldn't be enough to help in the situation with Naruto. Opting not to bring up the conversation that she had with Kikbi about Naruto and that he may not be the only one who was hiding things from them. This thought made her think that if things get any farther out of control that she didn't know how her family would be able to pull through in one piece. XXXX. The next day, Team 12 had all assembled at the main gate. Yakumo had her eyes closed with an excited smile on her face as she hummed a little tune. While Naruto and Kunga looked at the forest through the gate with a set of matching expressions of both excitement and anticipation. After a few minutes, Tazuna arrived, followed by Ikgao, who after seeing the looks of her genin, couldn't help but smile. Well, looks like the three of you are excited to leave on this mission, huh? Well, let's get to it then. As she gave her orders, she received a unanimous hi from her genin as they headed towards the land of waves. After a few hours of travel had gone by, Ikgao noticed that Tazuna looked more tense than an escort client should be. It was almost as if he was marked for death. Then she noticed a large puddle ahead and narrowed her eyes. The puddle it hastened rained around here in the last few days, definitely has to be genjutsu. But maybe this'll be a good test to see how they handle a situation under pressure. If things start to turn, he'll step in. After making the decision of letting her team handle things, Ikgao walked on the puddle as chains wrapped around her and ripped her to pieces, to the horror of her genin and Tazuna. The chains retracted as two cloaked figures rose out of the puddle and ready to charge at the group, claw-like gauntlets raised to strike. One down. One of the cloaked figures said as they approached the group. Ikumo froze. She thought her sensei was one of the best in the village. If she had got taken down that easily, then what good would she be against these two? Swallowing her fear, she dodged one of the cloaked figures as he lunged at her with his gauntlet. Seeing Yakumo in trouble, Kunga immediately threw a volley of shuriken at her attacker, managing to get his attention long enough for Yakumo to kick him away as she fired her senbon launcher at him, which scored a hit as the projectiles hit his shoulder. While Kunga and Yakumo were occupied with one of the cloaked figures, the other one charged at Naruto and Tazuna. Tazuna was scared. He had just seen an ex-Anbu member get ripped to pieces like it was nothing, and now he was going to see a couple of kids get killed before he died. The two who had teamed up were managing to hold off one of the one, but the blonde alone wasn't going to hold off the other one all by himself. As the other attacker approached, Tazuna couldn't only watch in shock and awe as the blonde-headed kid actually stopped his attacker. Maizu couldn't believe what had just happened. A kid stopped his attack with a single comma. A comma against his gauntlet shouldn't have been a match, but somehow this kid was holding him at bay. Jumping back, he readied himself to strike again. As Maizu lunged at him, Naruto, having already put the comma back, flashed through a set of hand signs fire style. Dragon Flame Jutsu as the fire spilled from his mouth and raced for the target, engulfing him in flames, only for a burnt log to fall to the ground smoking and charred as the real target was standing off to the side, only for Naruto to appear before him ready to strike. Judging from the shock of his opponent, he didn't expect that to happen. Oh well, Naruto thought as he went for the finishing blow, spinning and connecting his elbow to the left side of Maizu's body. A sickening snap echoed across the road as Maizu fell to the ground gasping for a breath and clutching the side of his body in great pain. However, Naruto didn't let up with his assault as he turned around and struck the back of Maizu's head, his opponent's head impacting the ground with a dull thud. Mizu couldn't believe his eyes when he saw his older brother hit the ground, holding his side. He didn't expect a kid to be skilled enough to handle his brother, let alone beat him. But his distraction cost him as a kick connected to his stomach, making him gasp for air. However, when he opened his eyes, he found himself lost in a thick mist that seemed to be impossible to see through. As Naruto finished dealing with his opponent, Yakumo had finished the signs to her jutsu as Kunga managed to land a kick to Mizu's midsection. Staring right at Mizu, Yakumo whispered Phantom Mist Jutsu. Seeing her opponent's look of confusion as he seemed to look around like he had no idea of where he or anyone else was, Yakumo knew that it had worked. As Kunga was about to strike again, he saw his opponent's confusion and knew that Yakumo's jutsu had worked. Changing where he would strike, Kunga tightening his hold on his wakizashi and smashed the hilt into the back of the man's neck. The attacker went down in a crumpled heap. To say Ikgao was shocked would be an understatement. Not only had her team managed to hold off enemy ninja, but they also managed to hold their own against two Chunin ranked opponents. While she was extremely impressed with Yakumo and Kunga's teamwork, she was shocked when she saw how efficiently and brutally the three of them had taken down their opponents, especially Naruto as he had taken one on by himself. Dropping from her observation point in the tree she had been hiding in, she clapped her hands as her three students and client looked to her. "Well done you three, well done. Now do you believe that my genin can keep you safe in the big bad world, Tazuna-san?" Ikgao asked, looking at him with smile on her face. The four of them just stared at her, two in amusement and two in disbelief. "What?" she asked, looking at them like it was no big deal that she was alive. "Why you died," Yakumo stammered. "We saw you get ripped to pieces," and she stopped as the two brothers didn't seem to be surprised at what was happening before it finally clicked in her mind at what had happened. She looked back and saw where her sensei had once stood now lay a pile of wood that was shredded to pieces. "It was a substitution," Yakumo said as the two brothers couldn't help but crack a smile at how she was reacting to the situation. "Yes, it was. Sorry, but I wanted to see how you three handle yourselves in a real fight and I was ready to step in if need be," Ikgao answered, cracking a smile at how the group was reacting. "So, it was a test?" Naruto asked as Ikgao looked at him as her smile changed from one of pride to one of sincerity. "Yes, Anto, it was a test, sorry, but I needed to know how you three would do on your own, and you all did wonderfully," Ikgao stated as she looked over the two Rouge ninja who attacked them. "Now if you will excuse me, I need to have a talk with these two," she said as she took the two bodies of the two ninja who had attacked them away into the forest for a nice long chat once they both woke up. As the three genin watched over their charge, the trio kept watch for any and all treats as they did. Tazuna seemed to relax just the slightest bit, if only just a bit. As they all waited for the genin to return, each of them were wondering what she was doing, and yet at the same time they all had the same thought that they didn't want to know. Deeper into the forest, said genin was taking her time as she had woken the Rouge ninja and was squeezing them for every drop of info she could get. As she finished with one of them, letting him look forward to his next session with her, as she walked over to his brother, bending over to lift his head, looking down at him, she smiled and whispered into his ear, "This all can be over quickly, or we can keep going for the rest of the night." She purred as he looked at her with a mix of fear, hate, resignation and what she thought was despair in his eyes, as Ikgao smiled sweetly before continuing, "The choice is yours." As this phrase left her lips, Gumzu sneered at her and responded, "Do your worst, you're going to kill me anyway, once we're done, so get on with it, you might as well kill me, you're wasting your time." A note of defiance in his tone. "My worst, oh sweet thing," she said in a seductive voice as she paused, her smile turned into something that she could have only learned from Anko. "I can assure you that only the best is yet to come." It took some time for Ikgao to return as she had been thorough in her interrogation of the demon brothers of the mist. But when she did come back, she marched straight for their Clint, a hint of anger in her eyes. "Look here, Tazuna-san, I know that this has definitely escalated from a C-rank escort mission. You mind telling me why the demon brothers of the mist attacked us when we're just supposed to be keeping you safe from bandits?" Ikgao questioned, a scary and angry glint flashing in her eyes at the audacity of the man to put her genin in danger. Tazuna almost immediately went down to his knees and begged her for forgiveness and to help him. Telling them all about the situation in the Land of Waves, about how a crime lord, Gato, has taken over and now holds control over the people of the wave with an iron fist. That a C-rank mission was the most that they could afford with the allotted funds from the few villagers who had extra to spare. As he finished, he pleaded with them again to help him, that they would repay them in the future when the wave was back on its feet. Ikgao heard the sob story and couldn't help but feel pity towards the man and his village, yet at the same time she knew what was supposed to be done. According to code, she was to abandon the mission and report Tazuna to Minato and have his name blacklisted for lying about the details and requesting a false mission. Deciding that she couldn't make this decision alone and that it was her genin's first time outside of the village, she asked them. "Well, you all heard what he said. What do you think? Remember, it's okay to not continue, it's a dangerous mission and one that is higher than the rank you guys are cleared for." Ikgao asked, her unusually gentle. Naruto knew that tone, it was one she had used with him whenever he had run off and she had caught him. She didn't get an answer right away. She didn't blame the three, they had heard that Gato kidnapped women and girls and forced them into the entertainment business. Finally, she received a response from one of the team, but the response wasn't one she or anyone else was expecting from him. "Anchan sensei," Naruto said to Ikgao, knowing that she would get him back for it later once they were back home, "we are going on this mission. We're going to escort Tazuna-san to Wave and Hess going to complete that bridge. Then, we're going to find Gato's thugs and make them pay. Finally, we're going find Gato himself and kill him." Naruto started out quietly, but near the end he raised his voice as his eyes burned with so much fury that the rest of them were a little shaken by it, even Kunga. But as quickly as it came, it left Naruto's face returning a calm state, though they could tell how he felt from the small scowl now on his face. While she was shaken by his response at first, Yakumo steadied and found her resolve agreeing with her teammate, though not about the killing part entirely. God didn't even have to be asked as he nodded, he would follow his brother's call, knowing that it would be dangerous, but that with what he and Naruto were able to do combined with their Onchan's experience and skill plus Ikumo's abilities, they were more than ready to handle this. Seeing the now determined faces of her genin, she could only smile at them for wanting to help Tazuna. Though she was a little scared of Naruto's proclamation. Most of all though she was scared that her genin had just bitten off more than they can chew and that it would end up being the death of them. She had known him for years, and ever since Naruto came home he was different, but at the same time she saw how her Atanto acted the same as he had before he left for the Forest of Death. She knew some things may have changed, but deep down he was the same old Naruto she remembered, and that was good enough for her, at least it was what she wanted to believe. Out of all the people who she ever knew, Naruto was the one person who never seemed to change what he believed in. Even more so since he had come home, she saw it in his eye, a resolve to make a difference, to change things so that other people would have a better future. As well as making a better future for himself. So, his sudden proclamation that he was going to kill Gato made her flinch on the inside. He wasn't actually going to kill anyone, was he? Putting that thought from her mind, she returned to the task at hand. She would have time to get lost in her thoughts later when they weren't on mission. The team coming to an agreement before him to help him and his people, Tazuna could only bow his head low and mutter thank you over and over again, tears streaming down his face. After their vote, the group continued on their way towards Wave Country. After another few hours of travel, they finally reached a checkpoint where a friend of Tazuna lent them use of his boat. While on the boat, Yakumo started thinking about what Wave was like and why they didn't have shinobi from their land handle the problem. Sensei, if this Gato is such a threat, why doesn't Wave have some of their shinobi take care of him? I mean, would it be easier than paying us to do it? She asked, getting an amused look from her sensei. The reason is that Wave doesn't have a shinobi village, Ikgao said, continuing. She added, due to its isolated location and natural defenses, the existence of a shinobi village here isn't really needed due to the nature and layout of the land. Before any more questions could be asked, the man steering the boat hissed a warning about how they were coming up on Wave territory and that they would need to be quiet as they didn't know who was nearby. After disembark, they thanked the boatman for giving them a ride and wished him safe travels. They proceeded on their way, only about an hour and a half from Tazuna's home. As they continued down the worn road, Ikgao began to feel as though someone was following them, but she coldly pointed out. On guard, but figuring it was because she was in unknown territory, she moved it to the back of her thoughts. Naruto, however, had sensed someone. It was faint as said person was trying to hide his or her chakra, so he or she wasn't found out. This also was making it hard for Naruto to pinpoint said person's location when suddenly a second chakra signature flared off to the right a ways. Naruto didn't hesitate and threw a kunai at the bush where the signature had appeared, only for it to vanish before the kunai hit its mark. On K, a small white rabbit scurried out of said bushes in a panic. Naruto, please be more careful. You really scared me there, I thought it was another enemy. Yakumo scolded him, albeit politely. Well done, kid, you saved me from being attacked by a rabbit. Tazuna mocked. Naruto shot a glare at the old man as his thoughts were interrupted by Ku, who commented, if we didn't need to protect this guy, I would seriously think about making good on your Onchan's threat from earlier, and yes, I felt it too, someone else is here. That's a snow rabbit, but the color? They only have white fur during winter when the days are short and there's little sunlight. This rabbit was raised indoors away from the light, which could only be for one purpose, a replacement technique. Ikgao thought as she looked around. Only now did she sense the presence of another person nearby, so they're already here. She mused, looks like Naruto had them pegged. No sooner had the thought gone through her mind when she felt the hair on the back of her neck stand on end as her instincts twigged to the incoming attack as she shouted, get down. Dragging Tazuna down with her as the rest of the team hit the dirt. No sooner had they hit the ground did a large blade the size of a full-grown man whistle through the space where they had been standing as it sailed past and embedded into a tree a short distance away. In a flash of body flicker, a man was perched on the handle of the blade. No wonder the demon brothers failed in their mission, but of all the people who would be sent to guard this old geezer, I never thought that the legendary sword mistress of the leaf would be the one I would face. The stranger said from atop his perch. Well, if it isn't Zabuza Mamachi, Rouge Ninja swordsman and former head of the assassination unit from the Hidden Mist. Ikgao stated as she walked forward to face the newcomer known as Zabuza. Ikgao, the sword mistress, did I get that right? It's too bad, huh, but you'll have to hand over the old man, Zabuza said casually, like this was no different than any other ordinary request as he continued, I'm going to give you one chance, walk away. Leave the old man and none of you will have to die. Tempting as that offer might be, you and I both know that won't be happening, so why don't we skip to the part where I use my blade to cut your head off and send it back to the mist so they can tear your page out of their bingo book for traitors. Ikgao stated as she drew her katana and slid into a ready stance. Following their senses led, the three genin also fell into formation to protect Izuna from the threat. Naruto knew that this wasn't going to be as simple as the two from earlier, as this guy was on a whole different level. Fine, we'll do this the fun way. Zabuza said as he and his sword flickered and vanished only to reappear on the surface of the small lake that was nearby. Chakra swirled around him whipping up water as he called out ninja art. Hidden mist jutsu. In an instant Zabuza vanished as a dense mist flooded the area around the group. As the mist thickened, the air seemed to get heavier, as if the group was not in a mist, but almost like they were underwater. Naruto and Kunga were holding up better than most would under this type of killing intent. Even still, both of their hands had a slight shake to them. Ikumo however was on her knees. Her already frail body unable to take the killing intent directed at her. The tent that she originally held in one hand was now held in both, shaking just like her body. She wasn't prepared for this. She expected another quick fight but not this. She didn't want to be here, she wanted to take everyone and run, but she couldn't even move a finger in this situation. We need to get out of here. We're not going to make it if we fight this man. I don't even think Ikgao-sensei can beat him in this mist. We are going to die. Ikumo thought as she stared into the mist before her, unable to vocalize any of her thoughts or actions from the killing intent Zabuza was emitting. Zabuza laughed from his hiding spot before listing off the 8 points on the body that would be a fatal blow. Now which will be my kill point? He questioned almost like he was doing an everyday task like taking out the trash or mopping the floor. Don't panic you three, I don't let my comrades die, especially when they're people I care about. Ikgao stated firmly, trying to lift the effects of the killing intent from her genin, and it worked as they all visibly stopped shaking violently. Ikumo shakily standing up before getting into a stance with her ten. Naruto and Kunga both relaxed and slipped into fighting stances, as their eyes were now hard and sharp. I wouldn't be so sure. Zabuza stated appearing in the middle of the young genin and the old bridge builder ready to strike, it's over. However, before the swordsman could strike the killing blow, Kunga pivoted and rammed the blade of his wakizashi into the Rouge Ninja, only for him to turn to water as the clone dissipated, ready to strike from behind. The real Zabuza made his move only for Ikgao to push Kunga out of the way, taking the genin was sliced in two before she could block, only for the clone to disappear in a puff of smoke. As her blade rested against Zabuza's throat as Ikgao leaned in and whispered, now it's over. Nice one sensei. Yakumo stated as the group seemed to relax just the slightest. Zabuza stood there for a short second and then started laughing at the swordswomen before speaking, over. I don't think so. Well, your technique is good, it's nothing compared to the original. I will never be defeated by a copycat like you using nothing but an imitation of the real thing. He said as he went on, you're full of surprises though. You had already placed that shadow clone and made it give that speech earlier. Well, you hid in the mist waiting for me to make my move. Nice try, the mist ninja said as a second Zabuza appeared behind her, but I'm not that easy to fool. The clone that she had her sword poised to kill splashed to the floor as Zabuza struck, only for her to duck the strike as the Rouge swordsman's blade swung past and gouged a line in the dirt. Changing his grip on the handle, Zabuza sent a kick into her midsection, which sent her flying a good distance. And into the water. Pulling the blade out of the ground, Zabuza dashed forward only to stop in his tracks as dozens of spikes littered the ground that lead to the edge of the water. Makabishi spikes. Trying to slow me down, foolish, you're wasting my time. Commented Zabuza as he jumped over the spikes and dove into the water. As Ikgao surfaced, she noted that the water seemed denser and heavier, only for Zabuza to come up behind her and run through a set of hand signs. Fool, water prison jutsu. As he finished the last sign, a sphere of water encased Ikgao, trapping her with no way out. Escaping into the water, bad mistake, I should have known better, this is his element after all. Ikgao thought as she was now useless she could get out of this jutsu shit. He's a lot stronger than I realized, I should've known better than to have underestimated him. Ikgao angrily thought, her overconfidence was not only going to cost her own life but the life of Tazuna, and worst of all, the lives of her genin. This prison may be made of water, but it's harder than steel, hard to fight when you can't move, Zabuza said as he shifted his focus to her genin. So much for the great Ikgao, I will finish you later, but it looks like your little friends will have to be dealt with, water clone jutsu. But that Zabuza conjured a water clone using a single hand to perforate the sign for the jutsu. All three genin were standing stunned as they had just seen their sensei get caught like it was nothing, and now they were the next item on his to-do list. You think you can call yourselves ninja because you wear a headband? When your life has hangs in the balance so many times that you no longer even notice it, then you may be called a ninja. When your skills earn you a slot in my bingo book, then you may have earned the title of ninja. But to call kids like you ninja is a joke. Zabuza stated before continuing, come now, where's the bravado from earlier that you showed? Especially you two, I didn't notice you shaking before, absolutely pathetic. A real ninja is one who can survive even in the face of death, and let me tell you a little secret, I have. Emphasizing the last two words, Zabuza proceeded to tell the trio of his exam to become a shinobi. In the bloody mist, the genin selection exam involved you killing the classmates and friends that you grew up, ate, and trained with. It was a test that truly showed who was the strongest. Now imagine a kid who wasn't even part of that exam showing up and killing over 100 of those students. Those were good times. At his story, Yakumo turned a sickly green at the thought of that massacre. Kunga seemed to be faring better, but not by much as he had to focus to keep his body in check, while Naruto seemed to be holding out the best, as his hand only had a slight shake to it. As he finished, the clone Zabuza created earlier vanished into the mist and reappeared in front of Naruto to everyone's shock and sent him flying with a kick to the head, knocking his headband off in the process. "Did like you were way in over your heads." His clone started as he walked towards the group. "You're just a bunch of immature, weak, scared, little brats who are already dead and just don't know it yet." Zabuza stated as his foot came to step on the headband that Naruto had been wearing just a second ago. "Run. You guys can't win, just take Tazuna-san, run and save yourselves. He can't move while Hess holding me here and his clones can't move too far from the original." Ikgao screamed hysterically as she was about to witness the deaths of not just her genin, but the two boys she saw as her Otanto right before her eyes. As the clone approached slowly, Yakumo and Tazuna had their lives flashed before their eyes. Tazuna remembered his family and the wave, their smiles and all their hopes placed on him to complete the bridge. Yakumo remembered her mother and father smiling at her defeating Ido with help from Kushina and Minato. The time she spent with Kurenai and training with her. Then she saw her team, with all the missions and training sessions that they had together, but then she saw a familiar head of blonde hair, but instead of a blank face, this blonde gave her a charming smile. And she felt a small bit of regret as she wouldn't be able to keep the promise she made about being his friend for much longer. Nga's mind raced trying to find a way out of this mess. But the only way he could see them getting out of this mess with their lives intact was if they could free their sensei. However, it wasn't like they could just run up and break the jutsu holding her, they needed a plan and fast. As a voice chimed in on his thoughts, "Now might be a good time to use it," said a female voice in his head. "Otherwise, the three of you, Yuron-chan, Tazuna-san and my brother inside your brother and me are all going to end up dead." Pausing just to let the point sink in deeper, she added, "Oh, and if my brother and I die, you can bet my father will find a way to kill the both of you in the afterlife." That thought alone made a chill run down Kunga's spine. "You really aren't helping right now," he mentally shot back. However, what happened next was something that surprised even Zabuza, as a thud sounded before his water clone splashed to the floor, revealing Naruto now standing in front of them, with his eyes narrowed in anger with a scowl on his face. As he faced the Rouge Ninja, Naruto stooped to retrieve his headband, putting away the kunai he had in his hand before rising as he tied it back in place. "That hurt, but I guess I'm going to have to go all out, huh?" he said as his scowl slowly turned into a smirk. "I was hoping to save this for the Chunin exams, but it looks like I have no choice." Naruto pulled out his dual kamas as he did. A viridian green chakra enveloped his whole body like a cloak. As tails sprang from the chakra, he slowly opened his eyes. His navy blue eyes were now yellow, and his round pupils now resembled that of a wolf's, as his hair seemed to lengthen slightly and become a bit more unruly as his canines became more pronounced. All the kamas in his hands now shone with the same viridian color as the cloak, the chakra blades empowered with this new chakra, almost to the point that they looked like they were glowing fangs. Ikgao had a look of shock and disbelief on her face as she looked at the boy who she thought of as one of her Otantos now stood there with a look that could only be described as feral. Her mind went straight to one thought, that this was the power of the 9 tails sealed inside him and his siblings. But it felt different than what she remembered the fox's chakra feeling like all those years ago when it attacked the village, like it had changed somehow. The Naruto standing across the way from her seemed like a completely different person than the boy she knew. As for Yakumo and Tazuna, their jaws would need to be picked up off the floor as they both just stared in utter disbelief. Nga and his tenant on the other hand couldn't help but chuckle on the inside as he smiled on the outside, knowing full well what the cloak was able to do, though he did notice that his cloak was a different color than his brother's. As Naruto's slight smirk slowly turned into a predatory smile as he uttered a few words that made Zabuza slightly unnerved. "I'm a little different from your run-of-the-mill immature brat," the words coming out with what could only be described as a snarl. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Wolf's Blood Namikaze, stick that in your bingo book." Hey, epic fight music soundtrack interdictor time 135 on track. The standoff that had been going on for the last minute broke as Zabuza created a half-dozen water clones that came at Naruto. At this, the young blonde rushed the clones with a speed that caused Zabuza to worry as a trickle of sweat rolled down the side of his face as his thoughts raced at the info he just learned. This kid is the son of the Hidden Leaf's Yellow Flash. His thought was reinforced by just how fast the kid was moving. Naruto's strikes were quick and clean with minimal wasted effort. Zabuza wasn't just surprised, he was outright stunned. The boy at least half his age was using the dual kamas with such grace, skill, and speed, yet with an air of savagery too. It shouldn't be possible. Yet at the same time, a feeling that he had long since thought dead began to resurface after almost a decade. For the first time in a long time, Zabuza actually felt excited at the prospect of fighting another person blade on blade. He was broken out of his thoughts when Naruto had finished off the last of his clones and started to run towards him, the dual kamas trailing behind him, splitting the water as he went. The overwhelming chakra coming off the blades and the wielder causing ripples to trail them. Looks like I might get to have some fun after all. Zabuza whispered, removing his hand from the water prison. He grabbed his executioner's blade and charged Naruto, leaving Ikao to drop back into the water as the jutsu dissipated and allowed her to take large gulps of precious air. Seeing Zabuza release his sensei, Naruto mentally breathed a sigh of relief. That was one problem taken care of, and the other was headed straight at him. Tightening the grip on his kamas, he swung and met Zabuza's blade head-on, a deafening clang and shower of sparks flying as steel met steel. Grunting at the overpowering force the larger man had on him, Naruto shifted his wrist slightly and managed to throw Zabuza slightly off balance due to the angle of the twin blades when their weapons clashed. Sidestepping, Naruto spun to the left and slashed in an attempt to at least break Zabuza's guard and find an opening. Smirking under his bandages, he had to admit that if he had been using a regular run-of-the-mill sword, that by now the blade would have broken and he would be on the ground headless, but unfortunately for the brat, or fortunately for him, depending on how you looked at it, he had the executioner's blade. Tightening his grip on his sword and bracing himself for the oncoming attack, Zabuza took the full brunt of Naruto's savage-like swing as his arms buckled a bit from the power that the young ninja was using. However, it didn't even come close to the power of another swordsman of the Mist's monster swings. And he knew that if he was taken out by this level of power, he would never hear the end of it if he lived and Kisame ever found out. Naruto's eyes went wide. He had at least expected Zabuza to take a step back or something. However, he didn't expect him to shrug off his swing like it was nothing, especially since he was using the chakra cloak that Ku gave him access to. The momentary distraction was exploited as Zabuza kicked him in the gut, making Naruto stumble back a few feet before he had to roll to the side in order to avoid the overhead swing from Zabuza. Righting himself, Naruto rushed towards Zabuza again using his speed rather than his power. This time Naruto dodged the swing at his knees with a well-timed jump that allowed him to twist in the air and score a shallow cut along Zabuza's shoulder. Wincing slightly at the cut, his opinion of the kid shot up as only a slight few had ever tagged him in a fight, even if it was just a minor cut. Naruto noticed his sensei running towards them, her hands a blur as she prepared a jutsu ready to provide backup. He smirked. Zabuza had been expecting this, forming a hand sign. 13 water clones formed en masse and headed for Ikao as she readied for the fight to come. Naruto looked at the older ninja and smiled as he spoke. Trying to keep little old me all to yourself, I am touched. DSK, don't flatter yourself, it's unbecoming. Zabuza said as he readied for round 2, I just don't want any interruptions in our duel. Naruto smirked at this as he readied himself to go again. I couldn't have put it better myself. The young shinobi said, surprising to him as once again this kid was different than what he had expected. When you mess with one wolf you have to deal with the whole pack. Well, you messed with my pack, so now you have to deal with me, Naruto said, motioning to his team, then back to himself. So enough stalling, let's get on with it, just you and me. Zabuza couldn't help himself as he burst out laughing. Kid, you really are something else. Are you insane or just plain suicidal, brat? You're openly challenging one of the strongest 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist. Even with your sensei, you two won't be able to best me. Zabuza barked out, his eyes never leaving the blonde in front of him as he also tightened his grip on his blade. What came next out of Naruto's mouth was something that he would end up regretting in a minute. Don't you mean former 7 ninja swordsman of the Mist, old man? From what I've seen, you've lost your edge as a swordsman. Guess laying around doing nothing but killing weaklings and common thugs for a few years will do that to you. Naruto said with all the sarcasm he could muster. At this, tick marks began to pop out on Zabuza's head. Oh, you're fucking dead, brat, and for the record I am not that old. I am only 26. Zabuza yelled, rage boiling in his eyes as he charged at Naruto. Naruto winced as his plan to anger the Rouge swordsmen worked probably too well, bringing his kamas up to block the blow from Zabuza as a shower of sparks rained down on him. His arms buckled under the sheer power of Zabuza's swing as he made a mental note to himself. Note to self. Try not to anger a former master swordsman during a duel by commenting on their age. I would have told you that it was a bad idea, but seeing as how that wouldn't have stopped you, I kept my mouth shut. Ku interjected only for Naruto to shoot the wolf a mental glare. While Naruto and Zabuza had their duel, the rest of the team was working to take down the water clones Zabuza had called up. As Ikao's attention had been shifted to the clones that were coming at her only for her to see Kunga rush out onto the water, Weaving had signs before shouting out, lightning style. Lightning hound. As his palm filled with lightning chakra only for it to leap from his palm and take the form of large feral beast that charged straight for the pack of clones, taking down 3 clones before it was cut down. Yakumo was again stunned, as not only did Naruto know water walking, but so did his brother. Just how strong were these two? As she had this thought, another popped into her head. Was she holding them back? No sooner had that thought gone through her head when 3 of the clones broke off and headed for her. As they did, she knew she had to move fast. Weaving hand signs, she cried, lightning style. Lightning needles as dozens of senbon made of electricity formed in front of her before they shot out at the clones, who were just seconds. As the electric projectiles hit their mark at high speed, the clones were shredded by the lightning, as she knew from their training sessions that water nature was weak to lightning nature, which was why the jutsu was much more effective in this case. Ikao fought through the group of clones and took down 6 of the clones before the last one was about to strike. The blade of Kunga Wakizashi stuck out of his chest as the clone dissipated as it splashed to the ground. With the clones dispatched, they turned to the fight between Naruto and Zabuza. As the 2 weapon-wielding shinobi clashed, sparks flying each time their blades met. See a diagonal slash coming from Zabuza. Naruto misjudged the timing of his dodge. This allowed Zabuza to land a clean cut on his shoulder. The favor was returned when they collided once more, Naruto angling and pushing his kamas off against the executioner's blade, managing to land a cut on Zabuza's cheek. This went on for several minutes before the 2 separated and breathing. Using the distance and the slight break to his advantage, Zabuza twisted his sword so as to hold it in a reverse grip perpendicular to his body behind him. Zabuza performed a move he hasn't used since his time as a part of the Mist Ninja Force. As he tensed before uttering 7 swords art. Decapitating Fang. Naruto barely saw him move as Zabuza appeared behind him, sending him flying from the monstrous power of his attack. Hitting the water and skipping a few feet, he managed to regain his balance and right himself in the air. His eyes widened as he saw the aftereffect of Zabuza's attack. A scar in the water ran from where Zabuza stood to where he was before his attack, at least 7 to 9 feet long, a foot wide and 2 feet deep. Not bad, brat. You're actually still alive. I must be getting rusty if you lived through that. Nobody's seen that and lived to admire it like you're doing right now. Zabuza praised slightly, though he was discontent with the lack of power in his attack. He was rusty, and he didn't like that. Naruto smirked as he readied for one final strike. Zabuza saw this and moved to do the same. Their duel would be finished with one final strike. Silence reigned over the lake as no one dared to take a breath during the tense moment. Finally, as if they were waiting for it, a leaf dropped onto the lake and the 2 charged each other. Ninja art. Savage wolf cross claws. 7 swords art. Reverse carving fang. Faster than the average eye could follow, the final strikes of Naruto and Zabuza ended. The water between them ripped open as water slowly began to fill back into the gash the 2 had made, causing turbulent waves to form. Naruto's eyes widened as he coughed up blood as a cut appeared from his left shoulder going diagonally downwards, ending near his hip. His chakra cloak dissipating, he fell hitting the water with a splash. His world started to go black as he saw Ikao and his brother sprinting towards him. He managed to mutter one word before losing consciousness. How? Epic fight music end. Zabuza stood firm. For a split second he was the victor. Before he coughed up blood staining the bandages over his mouth as a horizontal gash across his body was bisected by a vertical gash running the same length up his chest. The deepest part of the cuts was on his right bicep, which was cut halfway to the bone, and his left leg, which was cut almost clean through to the bone. Zabuza fell, though before he could hit the water a masked figure in a kimono appeared next to him and leaned him onto their shoulders. "Thank you for taking care of Zabuza for me," the young tracker said as they held up Zabuza's body. "I had been tracking him for weeks, but it seems you were able to get to him first. Tell the young man when he wakes up that he fought well." With those words the tracker ninja vanished in a swirl of mist. Taking Zabuza's body and sword with them, Ikao brought Naruto's body back to the shore of the lake. She was met with a teary-eyed Yakumo and a concerned Kunga, who asked if he was alright. To everyone's relief, the cut he received wasn't life-threatening, the deepest part being near his shoulder, was halfway towards cutting the bone, which Ikao took care of quickly using her medical ninjutsu. Azuna walked over dumbfounded as his mind raced with questions about how a boy his age could fight someone like that and live to talk about it later. One thing was for sure, though his opinion of Naruto had gone up by a huge margin. While this was happening elsewhere, the masked figure that Zabuza held close gently put him down, leaning up against a tree as they started tending to his injuries. After a few seconds, Zabuza's eyes opened as he locked on to the person treating him. "Ugh, that you Haku?" he asked, slightly disorientated from the amount of blood loss he suffered during the fight. Yes, Abusa-sama, it's me. I'm sorry that I let you get injured like this. I should stopped him when I had the chance. Haku solemnly said in a feminine tone, removing the mask on their face to reveal a beautiful yet sad female face. She expected to get yelled at for failing to protect him, but she got yelled at for a completely different reason. Are you an idiot? Zabuza questioned, making the young female ninja blink in confusion. That was a one-on-one duel between that brat and me. If you had interfered, I would cut you down for tarnishing my reputation as a swordsman. I may not have much left to my name, but that brat reminded me that I still do have my reputation as a swordsman. He said in a stern tone as he started checking over his injuries, being actually surprised at the damage that he sustained. Damn, that brat wasn't half bad. Guess he wasn't bluffing when he said he was different. He was broken out of his assessment by Haku, who reminded him to be careful. While the young Kunoichi worked on his wounds, his thoughts kept returning to the duel between him and the boy. That kid has something else. I could feel it when that green chakra covered his body. It was as if I was fighting a feral beast. The way he moved was more wild, more animalistic than technique. The main reason it turned out like this was because he lacks experience, and I have let myself get rusty over these past few years. If Hess this good, now just wait till our rematch. This is it for today, to be continued.